Retro.
Yeah.
Electro. Tech.
Oh yeah.
Hey, turn the lights back on. Wow. Retro electro tech. When real audio ruled the world.
Well, hello there once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Retro Ernest of Retro Electro Tech. And on the bench, turned on its side, sitting on a lazy Susan so I could rotate it around for this part of the video, is a Wurlitzer Model MC-1. It's a solid state AM/FM receiver and turntable combo. So this came to me with a complaint that the audio is noisy on account of the controls being all staticky and intermittent and so forth. And also too, the turntable record changer underneath this nice little roll top cover, or we'll just refer to it as a dust cover, is this Gerard, and I think it's a Model 50, if I'm not mistaken, this record changer here. And you can see I've already started to, get to it, and I pulled the platter off so that I could examine, what's going on the top side. And anyways, the complaint there was just sluggish behavior, okay? So on that note, I did a quick preliminary. I powered it up. That went well. And my main concern was the record changer right off the bat. So it seemed like it mostly wants to work. So that being said, the tone arm is nice and free. It wants to cycle, but I think there's a little bit going on probably with the main cam gear. And also too, it's pretty sticky around the, the platter hub, the spindle area, the bearing. So I'm going to pull all that out, get it cleaned up, clean and re-grease the bearings and the main cam. The idler wheel is in good shape. It's nice and rubbery and, pliable. Doesn't seem like it has much wear and tear on it, actually. Seems to be in pretty good shape overall. And as is evident, we were looking at the bottom side. So removing the chassis, it's a piece of cake on this as far as just 4 screws in total. You might be able to see these little wood blocks down here in the cabinet. There's these 2 down here. There's a couple up there, 4 screws. You remove those and you kind of pull back a little bit on the chassis, and then you can swing it out of the way like I did here. And of course, removing some of the wiring. And there you go. There's the bottom of the record changer, the mechanism. And there's one transit screw up here, one down there. I just have to flip those clips, pull it out, move it to the other bench, and start the cleaning process, which I'm going to do next. And a little more information on this that I was able to observe in here. So as far as the date goes, these main filters here, these multi-section cans, indicate a date of, let me see, was it? Yeah, September 1966. So, as I suspected, late 60s. Now, the cap cans aren't an indication as to the exact date this was made, but it gives us an idea. And also, too, and those caps are made by a company called Plessey, Plessey, out of England. The chassis here is stamped manufactured by General Instrument of Canada for the Wurlitzer Company. So there you go. Once I get the, like I said, once I get the record changer pulled, then we'll kind of go a little bit more into looking at some more details. And yeah, let me go ahead and do that now. Okay, so here we are, have the record changer moved over to the other bench. You can see I have it sitting on a padded moving blanket, okay, because I'm careful with people's equipment and, whatever. So there you go. Let me zoom in a little bit more there. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, so anyways, I wanted to start with getting the main cam removed. because I suspected that a lot of the problem had to do with the main cam, and sure enough, it was welded on really, really bad. And of course, you know, I don't mean literally welded on, but the old degraded grease had become like glue. This thing was adhered onto that shaft really, really bad. So I got my heat gun, and when you apply heat, you don't want to just sit there and you're just camping out on it. You don't need to get it red hot is my point. But I kind of backed it off a little bit and just kind of moved it around a little bit, focusing the heat on the center there, the hub and the spindle or shaft. And while I was doing that, I was starting to pry, you know, with moderate force, I guess. And you don't want to get too heavy-handed, and I'll talk about that in just a second, but just kind of working my way around, okay? And then moving to the other side and doing the same thing, just kind of prying upward there, moving my way around lightly, and just watching it kind of slowly lift as the grease softened up a bit with the heat. And then finally it just popped off, of course. So, you know, let the heat do the work for you, and just kind of start prying up. You can see I use just one of these little mini pry bars. I have some heat shrink, several layers of heat shrink, just to add a little bit of padding, because I don't want to scratch up people's equipment. Even though this area is hidden by the platter, it's just the way I prefer to work. I don't like to do sloppy work and add scratches and all that if I can avoid it. So, you know, work the way you want to work, but again, I'm just using a little padded mini pry bar, and that worked nicely to pop this cam off. So that's it. And yeah, the grease is really, really, really super thick and badly degraded. So there you go there. So I'm going to move this off to the side. Well, I'm going to, of course, you know, get everything cleaned up, and, you know, in here, and put a little bit of a light grease in the track here, get these shafts, everything all cleaned up, get the bearings are in, the grease on the bearing here is really, really super thick. Let me see if I could zoom in. Okay, and here we are looking at the platter bearing there, and literally the grease has the consistency of candle wax. Okay, that's how thick it is. Might be hard to see, but yeah, it's more like wax than it is grease. So it's badly degraded. That's how this stuff gets. And there you go. Nothing real groundbreaking, but I just wanted to point that out. You know, same thing again with that cam. The lubricants get really bad. They get like glue and cause a lot of problems. So let me back off just a, oops, wrong way. And let me get that removed. So I'm going to get all this stuff cleaned up, and a little drop of oil on the idler shaft there, and pull this platter bearing, soak it for a while, break up that nasty grease, and then get everything you know, repacked with grease, and off to the races we go. Okay, another thing I want to mention before I move on and flip this thing over and start working on the bottom side is I just want to go through and do a quick check to make sure that these different levers that are responsible for working the working the idler assembly, the idler arm, and so forth. In other words, yeah, let me just look and make sure I'm in view somewhat. Let me back off just a hair. Yeah, good enough. So I just want to assess these controls here. This is obviously our off and our start, our auto, and then our speed control. Okay, and you can see that when I engage this start lever here, that we have function as far as our idler arm, our idler assembly is concerned. So if the idler tire was reinstalled, this would bring our idler tire up against the motor spindle, the step spindle of the motor, okay, and start the auto cycling process, you know, the tone arm to lift and set down on the lead-in groove, and all is good in the world, okay? So that's looking good. And I could just manually manipulate these just with my hand, you can see. And the reason why I want to do this with my hand too is because I want to actually feel the lever and see if I feel any weird resistance or anything. Everything is looking good. Same thing with this feed lever here, this trip lever, okay? Looking good. Everything is nice and smooth there, so that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it over now and show you the actual levers that these controls here work. All right, so again, here's our start lever. You know, our off, our start. Okay, and you can see it working the different levers here. Okay. All right, if you just kind of study the mechanism, you can see that everything is moving about pretty good. And then, you know, if I further assess things here, yeah, these levers are working pretty good. Okay. Yeah, all these levers are working pretty good. They're not bound up by old grease, even though there's, you know, you can see the evidence of old lubricant that was smeared, but it's pretty much flaked away, and you know, it's not enough to where it's bogging down the mechanism there. So that's a good thing. So now I can focus my attention on, you know, the pickup plate and so forth, because you can see a lot of old grease here that's gotten really, really thick, and that's what I want to focus on. So that's mainly what I'm going to do. That's not to say that I won't get, you know, I'll probably get a brush and some alcohol and clean up around these levers here. Oh, and here's the speed lever, okay? And everything's moving nicely as far as this whole assembly of levers. You know, all this linkage and all that, okay? That raises and lowers our idler assembly here, okay? So that's all looking pretty good. I will end up, you know, cleaning this up a little bit. Again, I'm just going to use a brush and some alcohol and just kind of clean things up. Reintroduce a little lubricant all in here and so forth, and a drop of oil on the pivot points. Okay, you know, these pivot points, you know, a little drop of oil in there, because again, this is just a down and dirty, quick cleaning and lubrication. I'm not stripping the entire mechanism out, like I said, so just keep that in mind. And then I'll go ahead and, of course, relubricate these oil retaining bearings and all that, and so that the motor spins nice and free. The shaft, the spindle, motor spindle, everything's doing good there. But I want to focus my attention on this pickup plate, you know, on this main plate, cam, whatever, and remove all this old grease. So I am going to be stripping some of this area off, getting this cleaned out. And while I have this out of the way, I'll examine some stuff in here. You know, maybe brush a little bit of alcohol in there just to clean some of the nastier stuff, and do some light relubricating, again, where I can access. But this is just down and dirty stuff that's going to get this record changer working good enough so that the customer on his limited budget can enjoy it for a time. I'm sure it's going to last a while, even just with this level of service here. So that's it. So let me go ahead and move on. Okay, so everything is wrapped up on the bottom side here. I just want to point out a few things before I move on and start working on the controls on the receiver part of things. So I mentioned that I was not going to do a full mechanical restoration, which in part would entail me removing the entire mechanism and, you know, all the levers, all the parts, breaking them down individually and cleaning them individually and reinstalling everything and adding the appropriate lubricants as I go along, step by step, as the manufacturer would have done. Not going to that extent here. Don't have the time, not in the budget, so there you go. But anyways, I pulled the pickup cam, this main plate here off, and the release lever, got them out of the way, which granted me access to some of the levers underneath that I wanted to, lightly clean and reapply a little bit of grease to. And yeah, there you go. So not much more than that. Not much more to be said than that. Okay, I would have to have everything pulled apart to really show all the details, but not rocket science, not that difficult to do. And it's pretty evident once you get, as you can see, this main plate here, this pickup cam, once it's moved out of the way, because it takes up a little bit of real estate here, when you get that out of the way, you'll have access to some of the different levers, and you can see usually what had grease on it, even if it's pretty degraded, and what didn't. And when you kind of understand these mechanisms a little bit more, it becomes more of a principle-based thing. You kind of know where a particular lubricant should go based on what type of function it performs, its range of travel, what other parts of the mechanism it's in contact with, what type of contact, if it's really kind of brute force contact, metal on metal contact, and so forth. It becomes kind of evident what you should use versus what you shouldn't use, or if you should use anything at all. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it at that. And I applied a little smear of grease where I felt was needed, where the original grease was, of course, and based on the operation of the control itself, the mechanism. You can see, for example, I smeared a little grease underneath this lever. I felt it was a little bit more important to have this section of the lever riding on a very thin bed of grease here, okay? And you can see, even, you might be able to see, if not, no big deal, but you can see how these levers interact with one another down in here, which is why there's some grease smeared in there, and so forth and so on. So that's how you kind of determine what is going to benefit from grease versus what doesn't even need any lubricant at all. And on some of the pivot points, you can add a little, just, you don't want to go too crazy, but just a little drop of oil on some of these pivot points. And yeah, and this, you can probably see down here the speed control, and it's pretty brute force, and it's in contact with one of the shafts here of the idler assembly. You can see, and I have a pretty nice smear of white lithium grease on that. Okay, so again, it's not rocket science. You just have to understand in principle what's going on and what types of lubricants will benefit the mechanism. So on that note, just real quick, just a quick word of advice, because I could go on all day about this, because it varies a bit from one make and model to the next, and the lay of the land and how the mechanism was designed and all that stuff. But for the most part, you don't really need to use real thick grease on areas of the mechanism that require grease. Now, I've seen some of the greases that were applied originally that were pretty thick to begin with. Problem is, over time, when the grease does degrade, it gets even thicker. It could become like an adhesive. Like I said, a lot of the grease that I ran across was thick like candle wax, to the point where it had to be scraped off, okay? And it was like scraping a candle, that same consistency like that. So pretty nasty stuff. So I use a white lithium grease on these metal to metal contact surfaces, because it's not too thick, but it's not too thin, and the way it degrades, it doesn't seem to get as bad as some of the other greases out there. And it's not necessary to apply a real thick grease anyways. It's not like you're in need of a grease that can tolerate high speed, high friction, high heat environments. You're not packing a wheel bearing or an axle or whatever, where you're going to be dealing with high rates of speed and friction and heat and all that. It's a turntable mechanism, for crying out loud. So these are kind of just bigger, clunkier mechanisms, the plate, the levers, and all that. So not a big deal. And also too, we're not dealing with a precision mechanism like little fine clockwork mechanisms. So although these mechanisms are big and clunky, and they could in fact benefit, and do in fact benefit, from thicker greases, That's all well and good, again, when the grease is fresh, but once it gets thick, that's why these mechanisms bog down really bad. Some mechanisms bog down worse than others depending on how they're laid out. But lithium grease works really great. It's a little bit, a little bit on the thinner side compared to some greases, which is just fine for these types of mechanisms and how they operate. And again, we're not dealing with high speed, high RPM stuff. Same thing with the motor. It's not a high speed, high RPM motor. Not a big deal, which is why like a Singer sewing machine oil on the bearings, they have the oil retaining bearings top and bottom, that felt wick material, and you saturate the oil retaining wicks with some like Singer sewing machine oil, or you can use a Zoom Spout, kind of a turbine oil. I think Zoom Spout even makes a sewing machine oil, I'm not sure. But anyways, moral of the story is, let me get that oil that I just had. Like what I have in this bottle here, it's like a Singer sewing machine type oil. It's very light in viscosity. You see, hopefully you could see how the, you can kind of gauge the viscosity of that, okay? It's not thick at all. Plus it's really clean oil too. Very clean, very clear, kind of thin. So it doesn't have the tendency to, when it does finally degrade, because all lubricants will degrade over time, but like when this oil finally goes away, it does just that. It kind of goes away. It doesn't have a tendency to get sticky and gummy like some oils do. And again, this lithium grease doesn't have the tendency to get real nasty like some greases do. Yes, it will degrade. Yes, it will thicken up too, but not as bad as some. So just a word of advice when you go to apply greases, as needed, where needed. Again, it depends on the mechanism as to where you're going to apply it. I can't spell that all out in one video, and like I said, this wasn't intended to be a how-to step-by-step video, but I'm just giving some of you newer guys and gals some pointers. So this part turned out to be a little longer than I wanted to, but I just wanted to point out some of that. And also too, that everything I did worked out pretty good with just pulling back a portion of the mechanism, getting in there, cleaning out some of the crap. I even used some compressed air and blew some junk out of there. So there you go. So everything's been cleaned out. What you see here is the track, okay? There's a track in there. And I had to clean some old grease out of the track on the underside, and I just swooped a little grease in there, just a smear of grease on the track on the underside. Used a little bit of a few drops of oil around the hub and the shaft here, and the activation pawl and all that are nice and free anyways. So same thing with the idler wheel, shaft and hub, all cleaned out. A little drop of that Singer sewing machine oil, just a drop of oil there, and cleaned up the idler tire. So the idler tire here is what rotates the platter, okay? It engages with the motor spindle you see here, okay? The idler wheel here, the edge of the idler wheel comes into contact with the inner rim here of the platter, okay? And the contact with the idler wheel, the idler tire making contact with the inner rim of the platter here is what rotates the platter, okay? So you want to make sure all those surfaces are super clean too. Get some alcohol and, on a paper towel, whatever, clean the inside of the platter rim in here and all that. Make sure all these surfaces are clean. All right, it's that time to start flushing potentiometers and switches. I wish I had a lot to talk about. I would tell you guys a little story or something. Story time with Retro Ernest, but I really don't. But as you guys know, this unit here, as I mentioned, part of the customer complaint, other than the record changer not functioning properly, was the staticky and intermittent controls, okay? Both potentiometers and switches. So I'm going to be going through each and every one. And there's a selector switch down at the bottom too, a wafer switch that's going to have to be cleaned out good. And so this is going to take me some time to do in order to do a good thorough job. I'm just going to work back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until I get those wiper contacts and resistive tracks as clean as I can get them with a multi-flush cleaning. I will add a little bit of fader lube after the fact. And same thing with these rocker switches. There's about 3 rocker switches on the front panel. There's 4 potentiometers and a wafer switch. So yeah, it's going to take a little time because I'm going to do a very thorough job as always. And then I will be back. Once that's all wrapped up, I will have the chassis here installed back in the cabinet, the turntable as well, and the testing fun will begin. So stay tuned, I will be right back. Okay, so I got everything wrapped up and I did the best I could with the budget I had to work in. It was pretty limited, so hey, everything's working though with the record changer. The controls are nice and clean, they're quiet, and it's pulling in stations, the tuner works, so good. And this unit comes with these speakers here that you see. And you know what, I will say, everything is real wood, and it is heavy wood, so they did that right. And as you can see, it's a nice looking unit. Let me go ahead real quick and step in here and actually show y'all how it looks with the roll top pulled down. Okay, pretty nice, pretty nice. And yeah, nice wood, really. So anyways, when the customer brought this to me, there was a piece of vinyl in it. So I'm going to play his piece of vinyl. I actually cleaned it. I took it over to my vinyl cleaning station and cleaned it up. And this, let me see here. It says the best songs of John Peterson. Okay, so these are the songs to move and groove to. So if you get up and start gyrating around and all that, hey, have at it. Knock yourself out. So I'm going to get her started and let's go wild. All right. Come on. Oh, yeah. I can't get enough of that. Let's hear another great hit. This one's called Above All Else. Oh yeah.
We need the sunshine to warm our summer breeze. We need the showers for thirsty flowers and trees.
It's actually a pretty song.
But there's one thing we need far more than these. Above all else, the world needs Jesus.
watching End of Play. That other song was a song about our Lord Jesus Christ. Excellent. So here's End of Play. All right, it's working good. That should shut off. Yep. Okay, so as you can see, everything is working. The 45 end of things works as well. So I did the best I could, and there you go. So anyways, I'm going to get it back to the customer. So thank you, y'all, for following along. And as I always say, peace, love, music, and the vintage audio that brings it to your ears. Till next time, y'all take care.
This has been a Spinning Head production.